So I have to go and get it. It looks like I'm going to have to go and get fingerprinted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You mentioned it. Now, Jim is saying that he's very uptight because he flies his own plane in and out of the airport right here in Watertown Airport.
Yeah.
And now because of I would assume because is it a federal policy or is it a local policy by the county?
Well, it's really to the degree that it's being enforced, it's very, very local. It's interesting. I called, of course. I talked to the guy who runs the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association today.
Yeah. Right.
And this is in response to what they call Aviation Security Directive 8G from the TSA, the Transportation Security Agency.
Right.
Because at one time at O'Hare Airport in Chicago 2 or 3 years ago, they were handing out security badges to get onto the field to illegal aliens.
Okay.
And they didn't have adequate security.
Okay.
So this directive went out that gave you a lot of latitude locally how to keep the so-called AOA, Airport Operations Area, clean from terrorists.
Right.
Which, is a good thing. I certainly don't disagree with that. But, again, they had broad latitude as to how they were going to enforce it.
Right.
And I think we're going a little overboard. Here's what I have to do.
Okay.
I have this form that I have to take to the administration office at the Watertown International Airport with an ID.
Okay.
And, of course, a check payable to the Jefferson County Treasurer in the amount of $50 for administrative/clearinghouse processing.
Hey, nothing's cheap.
I'd like to know what that means.
It means they're pushing papers, and in order to do so, they need your $50 to do it.
Yeah, for the 30 seconds. I want to make that much money, $100 a minute.
Well, you did when you sold 95X.
So now, and then I have to go to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. I have to call them, set up an appointment to be fingerprinted, and for them to take my criminal history record check.
Okay.
And then, upon completion of the background check, which they forward to the Transportation Security Clearinghouse,
right,
I will be notified by the Airport Administrative Office, at which time, listen, it keeps going. This just gets better and better. They will schedule an appointment for me for what they call orientation training, which takes 30 minutes, and then and only then do they issue me a new ID card.
30 minutes?
Yeah. What could they possibly talk to me about for 30 minutes?
Well, let's see. You could start off by saying you've been in radio since 1970.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, they could talk to me about how much they like, AM 1240 WATN and Glenn Curry's Live at 5.
Well, there's your 30 minutes right there.
Well, depending on which shows they've heard, they could go on.
But here's the thing, and here's my position on this, because you and I talked about this on the phone. I think this is good. And you say, because this takes 30 minutes out of your time and, forces you to wear a badge, that's not so bad. If you pick up a chick down there in Midtown Manhattan, they might think you're a private investigator or something.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, there's a very fine line between civil liberties and security. And at an airport like ours...
Okay, go ahead, because I got something for you.
Watertown, yes, it's an international airport.
Right.
But, the biggest airplanes here are, who is it, Bill Murray's? Isn't he the one who comes in, or is it the other guy from Saturday Night Live who lives up in...
Dan Aykroyd. But he doesn't...
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
But Dan Aykroyd comes in on his big $60 million jet.
Yeah.
And, there are some oil companies who fly in their jets because apparently they have hunting caps on one of the islands.
Yeah.
Other than that, there are little single and multi-engine airplanes that, in the case of mine, my airplane weighs fully loaded, full fuel, full people, full baggage, approximately what my car weighs, probably a little less, frankly.
Yeah, right. Approximately the same tonnage as a Tomahawk missile, ironically enough. But that's not...
No, it's not. It's way less. The same kind of damage that young boy did when he flew his airplane into the building in Tampa.
Right.
He was crazy.
And if that same plane crashes into an oil tank outside Jersey, it creates an unbelievable explosion.
Yeah, but that can happen accidentally. It can happen on purpose.
Yeah, mostly on purpose, especially at a small airport.
And so the question is, should an honest, law-abiding, hopefully in my case very patriotic, I'd like to think I am, American, be forced to submit to a police agency
yes,
for this kind of a check?
Right.
and I understand the arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
But certainly,
I don't think
frankly,
there is
I
an
think that
argument.
what the security folks have done with this fellow from New York City is nothing short of heroic, because apparently this was the real deal, that he was going to bomb the subways or a stadium or something like that.
On 9/11, yes.
On 9/11 or thereabouts, and because we have the greatest security apparatus in the history of the world,
Yeah.
run by heroic people, we prevented it. So,
Right.
Certainly I see that side of the equation.
Yeah.
But the TSA itself,
Yeah.
and I was talking to guys in Washington who deal with people who created the rules, didn't really intend them for small rural airports.
Okay.
But in certain municipalities at the rural airports, they've been going somewhat overboard, shall we say, on this.
Okay.
And, I'm certainly not going to speculate as to why.
All right. Well, and again, I'm going to reiterate on something that you and I talked about earlier. First of all, the 911 passengers that took both the planes out of Boston's airport, was that Logan? Do you know that they originated in a small airport no bigger than Watertown's in Maine? Is that correct?
Actually, that's not true. They were in Portland, Maine, which is much, much bigger than Watertown.
I didn't know it was Portland, Maine, but they started off in a northeast, somewhat much smaller airport. Now, this is different because they were passengers, and you're talking about this badge, if you will, is only for people that fly planes off the tarmac. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's in the SIDA, they call it. I'm not sure I remember what that stands for.
And you seem to think that this is they're infringing on your civil liberties by doing this.
Yeah, I do.
Wow, you are a liberal.
I do, and I think it's a very, very slippery slope when you start doing that. And I would bet you, and he'll probably call up and completely disagree with me, that people like Joe Brosk might agree with what
Joe Brosk is driving back from Carthage to argue this point because he can't get through in the phone line.
Well, he might agree. I mean, this is one of those things where conservatives and liberals can often agree, that it's very important that the government, it's the don't tread on me kind of thing.
Right, right.
And it's very, very important. So, I'd like to see some sanity prevail on this. I mean, if obviously it's a rule and I got to do it, I'm going to do it.
Right.
But I'm probably going to protest along the way.
Right.
In a respectful way.
Who are you going to call?
Well, then I'm going to let you go because I was.
No. Who are you going to call? Is my question.
Oh well, I'm not going to. Who am I going to call?
John McHugh?
I already talked to the AOPA, and they're the lobbying group for general aviation. It's called the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. They represent our interests in Washington, and they're going to go to the director of the TSA and discuss it with him, frankly.
All right. Now, without even commenting on this, I'm going to just open up the phone lines because something tells me we're going to get a response from this.
I'm sure people will disagree with me, and I'm hopeful that at least a few will agree with me.
Yep. And then I'm going to open up the phone lines to what I got in the as a text message last night, an email from the Orbitine camp talking about marijuana.
Uh-oh.
And
are you gonna share that with us before the next call?
Yeah, we're gonna pass it around like a convict on his first night in the state pen. And
well, enjoy it. And I like Daryl. I'm a Daryl fan.
Daryl's a good man.
He sure is.
Good man.
Sure is. We'll take the other call.
Okie doke.
All right, thanks, Glenn.
That's Jim Leven. That's going to incite someone's fire. And 755-1240. If you agree or disagree with Jim, by all means, we'd like to hear from you. Hi on the Live at 5 show. Can I help you?
Hey, Glenn. No, I'm going to agree with Jim. I think